Yo, everybody. Welcome to Off Panel, a weekly interview podcast about all things comics, brought to you by Sketch.com. I'm your host, David Harper, and this week's guest is the writer of comics like the just-released Night Fever, the Reckless series, Friday Over at Panel Syndicate, and the upcoming Where the Body Was. It's Ed Brubaker. Thanks for coming on, Ed.
Hey, thanks for having me again.
How's your day going?
Oh, good. I just got back from the picket line actually, like a couple hours ago. So pretty good. I got my steps in.
Nice.
Walked around Disney a few times.
You know, I was going to ask you if you'd been doing any picketing. I hadn't thought about that. I bet picketing is really great for the Fitbit fitness tracker, like obsessed individual. You got to be putting up numbers.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. My friend Jordan, my co-showrunner from Criminal, he's getting like 20, 30,000 steps a day. His wife is like a guild captain. So he's there all day.
That's good for you. That's good.
It's a nice break from sitting in front of a desk all day. But yeah, I had a fun fan meeting today. I met my friend Sarah Carbiner, worked on Rick and Morty in season 3. And so she introduced me to Mike McMahon, who was on Rick and Morty with her and who created Solar Opposites and Lower Decks. And so I walked the entire block around the Disney lot with him, talking about nerd stuff for about an hour. That was fun.
Oh my God. That's nice. Was that like a common fan? Like you were fans of each other situation?
Yeah,
okay.
Yeah. He's a super nerd. Yeah. And in fact, crazy. Speaking of back in the days when I was on social media, he used to secretly do a thing called Star Trek Next Generation Season 8 on Twitter, where he would put up little taglines about episode summaries. And I retweeted one, and like a bunch of my friends, including Will Wheaton, retweeted it because of that. And then like a couple weeks later, he got a call from Simon & Schuster or somebody and got a book contract to publish them. And now he does Lower Decks. so he was like, yeah, you're actually partly responsible for, me getting into this. So I was like, oh, wow.
That is, they always say that like once one origin story is kind of taken when it comes to breaking into like comics or media or anything like that.
I mean, he was already like a writer's assistant on Rick and Morty, so I think he was going places.
That's a tough one to repeat. To repeat. That's hilarious. I love that idea. But okay, we got to jump into the big week for you. It's It's the week of Night Fever arriving. It's your new graphic novel with your very, very frequent collaborators, Sean Phillips and Jacob Phillips. I wanted to start by talking about it, Ed, because I have a lot of thoughts. Here's the solicit. I'm going to read the solicit first. Who are you really? Are you the things you do? Are you the person inside your mind? In Europe on a business trip, Jonathan Webb can't sleep. Instead, he finds himself wandering the night in a strange foreign city with his new friend, the mysterious and violent Raynor, as his guide. Raynor shows Jonathan the hidden world of the night, a world without rules or limits. But when the fun turns dangerous, Jonathan may find himself trapped in the dark. The question is, what will he do to get home? I have 3 things and a question for you to get us started. First, that has to be the darkest book of your collaboration. It is very, very dark. Second, it is absolutely bonkers. Third, I think I've only read it once. It might be my favorite book you and Sean have done.
Oh, wow.
It's early and I've only read it once, but it totally blew me away. But now the question, what the hell, Ed? What the hell? That was wild.
I thought as you were reading the solicitation, I'm like, how much did I lie in the solicitation? And I'm like, oh, it's actually not that off from from some of what happens in the book. Like, cause you always lie a bit in your solicitation cause you don't want to spoil your book. So then you also want to make it sound a little bit sexier than you think it really is. Though I was like, this is super sexy. I mean, there's robots having sex in it.
This is true. One thing I think is funny about this book is it's related to your solicit. I actually deliberately went in knowing as little as I possibly could about it. Because, whenever I talk about your books, I always say, all I need to know is it's a Brubaker and Phillips book. I didn't even read the solicit. And I tried not reading your newsletters. I feel like even if I had some idea as to what was coming, it would have been kind of meaningless in preparation because nothing could have truly prepared me. There's one point in the book that is so bonkers that I actually laughed out loud as I was reading it. I don't want to get too far into that because it's like a spoiler. I do kind of feel like reading your write-up in the back of the book. It felt like you were almost expecting this sort of reaction. Like people were going to be like, where did this come from? Was that the case?
I mean, I never know what people are going to say. Like, the one thing that's different about doing monthly comics and graphic novels is the amount of anxiety that you have when you near the end of a graphic novel is closer to like the anxiety when you finish the first issue of a comic where you're like, did we nail it? Because you don't know, and you've been working on it for 6 months. You know, if it's a graphic novel, it's like Sean takes 4 or 5 months, maybe 6 months to draw, depending on how many pages it is. So by the time it's done, I'm like so deep in the woods that I have to send it to, like, I think Tynan was the first one to read this one, maybe him or Kieran Gillen. I have like 4 or 5 friends I send stuff to read to make sure that I'm not crazy. Basically. And also because it's just like, oh, we've been working on this forever and no one's seen it except for me and Sean and Jake. And Jake doesn't even look at it until like the last month while he's coloring it. So it's really just me and Sean for like 6 months talking about scenes and going, him sending me pages and me sending him pages. And so yeah, I definitely felt like people were going to read this book and just be like, get like 20 or 30 pages in and be like, what the fuck is going on here? And in a good way, I hope.
Yeah.
Like to me, it feels like it's very steeped in 2 different traditions, which is like sort of classic creepy noir, like the person who, walks down the wrong alley, and gets into like some kind of weird scenario. Like I've always loved those kind of, man who knew too much kind of noir stories of just a person who takes the wrong left turn and, but then also like wanting it to feel European. And for me and Sean, that was like trying to sort of pay a bit of homage to like the stuff the European comics we read when we were growing up in like the 70s and 80s, like these sort of poorly translated, like illegally published usually, or like in heavy metal. So there's just tons of sex and nudity and, but then always this sort of mysterious Cold War vibe too. So we were trying to, do something that was like a mix of noir and that kind of weird Europe. But I wrote it at a time when, someone in my family was going through like a major health crisis. And so I was spending a lot of time, at hospitals and, everything's fine now, but it was just like a really rough year. And I had like an outline for this book. I'd been thinking about this book for about 15 years, but I couldn't crack it. And then I remembered Sean really was like in between every project, he asked me to write something set in Europe or UK because he's so sick of drawing America. So I thought about that. And suddenly like I figured out who the guy was and like how to pull it off and like, oh, it's a book fair. And like all this stuff started coming together. And I was like, oh, okay. And so I just started writing it really before I completely knew how to pull it off. And so I was like doing it around, dealing with this personal stuff. And I felt like I was using it as like a repository for all like my fear and anxiety. But also I really wanted to try to do something that just was sort of like crazy. And
yeah,
because like, I just felt like it needed to sort of like, maybe there's a possibility that it sort of is that book that you give it to people and it's like the exact thing they need at that moment to be like, I'm not the only one who thinks everything's crazy. Because you always write something that's reflective of the world you're living through or what you're going through, even if you don't know that. But yeah, I just felt like it was like, like I said, it's like I made that joke, like if writing is normally therapy, then this one was primal scream therapy.
I do think it's interesting. Like that was, I love, shockingly, I really love the books you and Sean do together. But the thing about a lot of it is like, they're like great stories. Like I love that part of it. I feel like this one, part of the reason why my initial take was, I was like, I think this might be my favorite of yours, is because of that personal connection. Like I found myself writing down a lot of lines that were in the book just because they like really resonated with me. Like there was this one where it says, it was Rainer saying it, I think. He said, all these things we do that are supposed to make us happy, but everyone's still empty inside. And like, that's a very dark line, but it's also like something that I don't know. I don't want to say I always feel like that, but sometimes where I'm like things that I always thought like normally would make me happy or like would bring a lot of joy to me aren't resonating with me in the same way. And I have like lots of questions about that. And it was interesting to have that layer kind of worked in there where it goes from, I mean, first off, I just want to say it is like an highly entertaining read. But then on top of that, the fact that it has like that thoughtfulness to it and like that kind of a lot of questions about like it's set in 1978, but it feels like a lot of questions that are really resonant today. I think that made it a little bit more impactful for me.
Yeah, I hope. Yeah, it was weird. Like deciding to set it in the 70s, of course, was because I wanted that sort of Cold War Europe vibe, and also no cell phones as usual.
Right.
I'm thinking about doing something modern at some point just to prove to people I do know that the modern world exists. But yeah, it was there was a moment where I considered just making it modern, but I just thought, it's a guy at a book fair. When you're on vacation, you're kind of in another world anyway. Like it could be anytime, and But I also like there's that line in there. There's like I don't want to ruin the book, but there's like that line at that really weird scene later where it mentions like it might be 20 or 30 years from now.
Oh, right, yeah.
Like that sense of like, oh, I'm writing it from the future of when all this is happening, like that weird sense. But yeah, I really, it was so weird because there were moments where it was really difficult to write because of the subject matter of it and just how, much I was sort of thinking about mortality
right.
as I wrote it. And it's definitely like I don't know. I wouldn't call it a midlife crisis book, but it kind of is. It's the middle-aged crazies.
Well, I mean, everything to some degree for writing is like people.
It's a crisis.
You're dealing with whatever is going through with your life through the process of writing, and that was one thing I think is interesting about it. So you talked about this already. The core idea came to you in 2010, and it mostly stemmed. And like the idea of wanting to do something different mostly stemmed from doing 5 consecutive Reckless books and the aforementioned desire to draw something in Europe.
Yeah.
I'm not going to ask where the idea came from, but what made this the right idea for you right now?
I think it was the shift from Reckless, which had, obviously the last Reckless book is a pretty dark one, but the Reckless books in some ways had been sort of more adventurous and a little bit lighter, and then I think just when I started thinking about what to do for like a European set story, I was like, oh, it could be fun to do kind of like a dark, sexy noir set in Europe, and then all this other stuff started happening in my personal life at the same time. And I think it just sort of subconsciously all seeped in there, this sort of sense of, it's very hard to live right now without like constantly, if you look at the news at all, it's just like, it's almost like someone's flashing a big sign like, hey, the world's going to end soon, and you just try to keep going on with life because you're like, well, what can I do about it? And, so that feeling of kind of, that feeling of the world when everything's going good for you. And then when things start going bad for you and you're in that world and you're like, holy shit, like, what the fuck? So that's kind of where a lot of the stuff came out of, but also like I do sense it's interesting. Like I'm in my 50s now, and things that I cared about when I was in my 20s or 30s, I still care about them, but I care about them on a different level because it's like I've lived a lot longer. I've experienced a lot of different things. So it's really strange. It's like I used to just be obsessed with collecting books and stuff. And now I'm like trying to pare down my collection to like things I know I'm going to want to read again or things I know I'm going to want to loan to people because I'm like, I just have too much stuff because I spent 30 years collecting books, so it's like, I was thinking about stuff like that. And it's like, as you get older, the older you get, the more people that you've lost and, the more you've changed and the people around you have changed and you've watched what life does to people kind of. And I was thinking about that, obviously like sitting in like hospital waiting rooms and stuff. And, and I was thinking about the years that I had spent working with Refn. And I really wanted to channel some of that feeling into a book because there was this sense of, you know, like one of the reasons I moved to LA was I saw the movie Drive, and I was like, fuck it. Like that's exactly like a movie I would have written, you know, like I want to work with that guy. And like somehow miraculously, I actually made that happen. And then it's like, you know, it was a totally different experience than what I expected it was going to be. But also, like, I was working with one of the world's most famous directors, and you're just kind of, it's like you go from being some guy who works in a basement office in Seattle to like living in LA and constantly going to lunch at like, you know, restaurants in Hollywood with one of the world's most famous directors, and people are constantly coming over to talk to him, and you're just like this invisible person next to him. And there's this sense of like, oh, I've been granted entry into some other weird world. And then eventually it becomes normal when he's like, oh, I talked to Joe Dorowski yesterday, and he's going to do a tarot card reading for me. You know, and you're like, oh, okay, that's fucking insane that would be normal conversation. But you know, or, oh, hey, I ran into Darius Kanji, he's going to shoot our show. It's like, oh, okay, the world's greatest living cinematographer, awesome. You know, like, and there was just this sense of like, you know, I know we all sort of instinctively have this sense of wanting to be part of like the inner circle, because, you know, through the history of civilization, like the people in the inner circle had a better life and had to do less actual labor. You know, that's why it's in our lizard brains. You know, like that desire to not be a red shirt, to be like one of the Enterprise crew that gets to go down. Yeah. Well, I guess that is a red shirt. Shit, not a good enough. Anyway, but the desire to be like not on the outside, you know, to be, and I really wanted to find a way to sort of write about that, and also to write like a character that was sort of like Refn, yeah. You know, and Raynor is definitely like, you know, sort of a combination of things about Nick and a character that Nick would create.
Yeah.
You know, like the things that Raynor says are kind of like the things Nick would say, you should have a character like this. And then he'll give big speeches about, you know, life and things that are important. Like Nick never gave me a speech about Taurus always wanting to get high. That's like another friend of mine who used to have that speech. but Nick likes to give like big pronouncements about the world and stuff, and you know, and likes to write monologues for characters and stuff. It's like it's one of the things I think is hilarious about, you know, about being around him, is just like he's totally like an eccentric artist in all ways, like even in private, you know, like it's not an act. That's who he is.
It's funny. There's two things I want to say about that. First off, I actually think Raynor is one of the best characters you guys have ever done. There's like, I actually like Jonathan Webb, the main character, actually talks about this, basically about how he has this magnetism to him. And there is something very deeply, like, he's a horrible person.
I hope you're listening to this, Refn.
But there's something deeply fun about reading that character. But the other thing is actually, as I was reading it, I had the thought that I was like, this does kind of feel like it's got the Refn vibes to it. And even down to like how Jacob colored it, it has kind of this glow to it.
Yeah, it's neon. Yeah.
Yeah, the neon. And it kind of reminded me, I was like, for the first time when I watched Drive, where like everything is so like neon and saturated and everything. And it just has this vibe where you're like, I'm involved with something I shouldn't be involved with, but I like it.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I definitely, you know, when we were just sort of in the early stages and I was still formulating like the major movements of the story, as I was working on it, I kept thinking more and more like Lynch or like Fellini and stuff like that, just as far as like the weird Tour of the Night stuff. Like I was like, oh, okay, it'll start as a noir, and just the further you get into the story, because with each scene, he's not slept longer, you know? So it's like, and he's drinking and doing drugs, doing all sorts of crazy fucking shit. So, yeah.
It's like Before Sunrise, if instead of meeting Julie Delpy, he meets Refn.
Yeah. That's a perfect description of the book.
Yeah. It's like that night in Vienna could have went way differently for Ethan Hawke. Thankfully, he ran to Julie Delpy instead. But the moment I knew things were going to go off the rails for our guy, Jonathan Webb, was when you kind of use those black pages as like a chapter break, almost like the issues. And it works really well. But the second section opens with him saying, at some point, I decided I needed drugs.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh boy, this is going to go some places. And it went some places.
Yeah. That's the thing, too, because when you're in Europe, you can just go to like a pharmacy and tell them what's going on with you. And they just give you drugs, depending on, unless it's like heroin, you know, if you're in Amsterdam. But yeah, you can just go to the pharmacy and get a thing. And you're like, oh, I don't need a prescription for like a fucking ointment. Like, it's just funny. So it's like, yeah, you could just go to the drugstore in Europe in 1978 and get sleeping pills, probably, you know, but not at 2 a.m.
He went a different direction. And now, a quick word from one of our sponsors. Summer is coming fast and furious, and so are the campaigns on Zoop, the crowdfunding platform. June launches include Stardust, the Super Wizard Anthology, which features an all-star team of artists and writers like Mike Allred, Francesco Francavilla, and Cecil Castellucci, a La Borncana Volume 1 hardcover from Edgardo Miranda Rodriguez, and more. Also, there's still time to support Jason Copeland's indie hit Full Tilt, as well as Jorge Molina's gorgeous art book Zerto, among many other campaigns that are currently live. It takes less than 30 seconds to sign up, and the e-commerce style checkout is easy and intuitive. Add multiple rewards and add-ons into your cart, provide some info during the checkout, and you're done. No confusing additional steps in finalizing your pledge, and no post-campaign surveys. For creators looking to crowdfund their project, Zoop is currently open for submissions. Email them at hello@wearezoop.com to start a campaign. And now, back to the show. I do think that those section breaks are actually really interesting and super useful for you, it seems, as a writer, because I love that there's like this pause, and then I feel like your first line is always like an accelerant for the next section. It actually kind of reminded me of
a commercial break.
Well, I was going to say that, but also I presume you've seen Memento, but there's this one scene in Memento where Guy Pearce wakes up and he's on a toilet and he looks at his hand, he sees a bottle of alcohol and he says, I don't feel drunk. Yeah. And I love that section because it immediately sets this expectation of literally anything could come next. And like, that's kind of how you handled it in this book.
Yeah. I was thinking of them as like sort of each, like a sort of a pause between the movements of the story, you know, like I didn't count acts or anything like that, but it's like, I definitely knew where I wanted each of those like spreads to be. Like those are all in the script with like the descriptions of what's supposed to be on them and stuff.
The black spreads, the ones.
Yeah, the black spreads. I know people think that Sean just adds those in as if we don't discuss the flow of the story. Like we discuss every fucking page turn. It's insane. Like how much we think about that stuff. But yeah, I love doing that. Yeah, this one, it was such a blast. I feel terrible for Sean because I put art on all of those, and then I was like telling him how many pages the book was going to be, and I didn't add up any of those because I was like, oh, those are just interstitial things. Those will take you no time. It's like when you've worked with someone for 20 years and you're just completely like, oh yeah, no, that's going to take him days, like at least a day to draw all that stuff. But yeah. It was I'm always underestimating, like, you know, it'll just be a cool little interstitial image, like, you know, it'll be easy for you, like, because I don't have to do it. It took me 5 seconds to write that drawing.
It's not quite as nice as like that the section in one of the Reckless books where Ethan had the bag over his head and it was just all black panels.
Oh yeah,
I bet Sean liked that quite a bit, but
yeah, that was planned for both because I thought it would be fucking audacious as hell, and I wanted to just show our balls for a second. But also because I was like, man, this story's going long. Sean's going to be so pissed. So I was like, oh, wait, I can do this sequence with a bag over his fucking head. Fuck, that'll save us like a day. You know, I was thinking about Born Again, like Daredevil Born Again, like the making of it, like behind the scenes stuff at the back of one of the collections talks about like how when Mazzucchelli got behind, Miller started writing like pages of all silhouettes and stuff for him. And those are like some of my favorite pages in the thing. And it's like, oh, that was to save him because he was behind. So it's like, I was like, oh, that's actually a good technique, though, just in general. Like, not just to save time, just to, do well, is like, yeah, don't make every page fucking impossible to draw. Just every like fifth page.
As you know, I just did an interview with your other collaborator, Marcos Martin, and it is kind of funny to like get his perspective on working with you and having talked with Sean and everything before. It's funny though, because like Marcos is just like, he's just crazy enough where he'll take your thing that's like hard and he'll make it harder, because like that's just kind of how he rolls. But also because like, it's like for him, like Sean drew this book. He drew Night Fever bigger. It was, I think if I remember correctly, you said it was twice as big.
Yeah, it's double up. It's the same size. I have it right here on my desk, the Wally Wood artist edition, which is like the biggest one IDW ever did. That's the size of Sean's art.
Yeah.
For it. It's the size that comics were drawn up until the late 50s, I believe. So it's like 20 by 30 or something.
For both of them, though, that's like a lot. Marcos will go the extra mile because like he's like, I want to deliver the right thing for the story. And Sean will draw it bigger because it's what will deliver the right result. And I think that's part of the reason why part of the reason why your books are good is because you work with like awesome talents, but also because
that's the trick. Find a Marcos or a Sean and never let them go.
Yeah. But they both have like a maniacal desire to like do the right thing for the story. Not that everyone else doesn't, but it's really interesting to talk to them about that and see how far they'll go to do that.
The thing that they have in common the most, other than just being fans of each other, like it drives Marcos crazy how fast Sean is. I mean, I can't even tell him how many pages a week Sean can draw now. Like especially like, I mean, I can't. Yeah. But the thing that is interesting about both of them is they're both all about the storytelling, but they're both also really good at conveying emotion in characters, which a lot of people are good at one or the other, and it's one of the hardest things about comics. You have to be good at drawing everything, but also make someone care about the characters in the story. And like, I love Alex Toth more than, I mean, he's one of the best artists of all time. But if you look at his stuff, you don't empathize with the characters. Like, he drew like really kind of flat, basic kind of characters, and they didn't, like the stories didn't suck you in. You love his art because he's fucking amazing at it. But there's no masterpiece by him, that you go and you look at and you're like, oh, this is fucking amazing. And I can't, I'm turning the pages, like, caring about what happens. It's like, it's just not there. And with Sean and Marcos, you really feel for their characters all the time. So it really, that's so important in comics.
Yeah. Well, and it's not just like the leads, like Jonathan. I mean, there's this one character at the end, Nicola, who is connected to Raynor in a specific way. And the way that he draws her, like the character acting on her, you really understand the situation, like the confusion on her face and the situation she finds herself in. It's interesting how much nuance he can put in a single like face. Yeah.
That was amazing when I saw he landed that scene, because that's such an important moment in the book. And for a long time, I was like, am I actually gonna have room for this scene? Because the whole book doesn't work without it. Right. Like it was, and then I was like, oh man, how do I pull this off? But yeah, Sean just fucking nailed that. Yeah. But pulling that whole story together at the end, I was just like, oh man, I hope this works. This is fucking insane. It was funny because it's, I mean, the book we did after that Sean's almost done drawing and Jake's like halfway through coloring right now, is even, I mean, it's not, I wouldn't say it's weirder, but it's definitely out there on the level in a completely different way than Night Fever. It's not like surreal like Night Fever, but the storytelling structure of it is fucking nuts. Like, it's the most experimental thing we've ever done, which, I guess just because after Night Fever, what else could we do except take another complete left turn? Because it's like, well, we can't try to do anything like this again. Like, at least not soon. Like,
is he drawing that oversized again?
I don't know I think he drew that one 10 by 15. Okay. Like normal, like old comic style. Most comic people draw like 8.5 by or 8 1/3 by 13 now, I think. Mm-hmm. Like 25% larger. But most comics back in the 60s and 70s were drawn 10 by 15, which is 50% bigger than print. But yeah, I think the Reckless books he draws like 8 1/3 by 15, but he pencils digitally. So he pencils as big as he needs every panel to be. So it's just about how big the page is that he's inking on. But he's talking about maybe doing each tier as its own page so he can still do ink double up because he liked it so much. But it might be hard to sell his artwork that way.
The interesting thing, though, is I don't know if this was a scripting thing or if this was a Sean thing or if it was like the bigger pages thing, but it felt like there was more room on the page in a good way. Like there was like these little beats that I kind of feel like wouldn't normally be in one of your stories. I'm going to show you one. Listeners can't see it. So
yeah, probably. I definitely put more panels on the page. Well, actually I didn't.
There's this cat.
Oh, yeah.
There's a cat that shows up at the end. And like that's kind of like almost like a Mignola-esque thing where it's like this little beat where it just looks at something that's kind of unrelated but it connects in the way you're reading.
Yeah, totally.
And it felt a little unusual. And like that's another reason why I think I like this book so much is it was like you guys doing your thing, but you're like adding these little like twists to it, and it really works.
Yeah, I agree. I think that's that kind of stuff was like those opening 2 pages where it's just like shots of the city, you know, with nobody in them even, you know, until that last one where it's the guy opening the door to the hotel, like just stuff like that. I was just thinking about the mood, you know, of everything as much as the story and the characters actually. And I think, you know, I think that was one of the reasons that it was, to answer your question of 4 hours ago, I think that was one of the reasons why it was like the right thing to do after the Reckless books, was because like Sean said, he was going to draw it in 4 tiers per page, which we'd never done before. And it broke my brain trying to figure out how to write that way. And he told me eventually just to write panels and not worry about like what was going to be a tier or what. And it was like, oh, I can't, it's so hard for me to write that way without trying to control the, you know, the reader more. And so it was like there was a little bit of fear with every page as I wrote, because I had usually I know when I'm writing the page, I can kind of picture, you know, 80% of how Sean's going to draw it, and then there's always some surprises, you know. But with this one, there were many times where I was like, I have no idea how he's going to make this page work. And so that was really exciting, you know, getting the art back from him. But yeah, I think, you know, he said he inked it just as fast as the smaller pages, and he tried not to go too overboard on the detail while inking, but I still feel like he kind of did, you know, like in a good way, like it does, you know, like I can't wait to see what our foreign publishers think of it, you know, like, because it really does feel more in some ways like some sort of synthesis between what we do and what, like, you know, European publishers would put out, or, you know, I mean, hilariously, all the reference that Sean used for the city is Angoulême.
Oh, really?
Yeah, because he's been there and had a lot of reference for it and stuff. And I said it in France. And so he decided not to use like all of these other photos he'd taken from Italy and stuff. And so he just used Angoulême. So I was like, oh, that's hilarious. Maybe we'll get nominated for an Angoulême award. It's like, how much? It's almost like payola.
Yeah. It's like, look, do you recognize anything? Grand Prix.
I did that one book that was set at Comic-Con. That didn't get nominated for any Eisners. Damn it.
Oh, I was going to say, Cruel Summer didn't get nominated for any Eisners? Come on.
Bad Weekend.
Oh, Bad Weekend. Sorry. Yeah. Oh my God. That's funny. Oh, I feel like it is interesting though, because like it's not just the setting. I feel like I don't know. It does feel like more international in like an interesting way. Maybe that's the Refn of it all.
My writing, honestly, is actually pretty influenced by stuff like Kafka and Kundera. And, you know, like Danilo Kiss, and, you know, there's a lot of European writers that I spent my 20s obsessed with. So like I'd never really been able to do anything with that, you know, with that influence really, like of like doing anything that felt sort of existential or surreal in any way whatsoever. And this was really, you know, it's like it makes me wonder now about the people who made, you know, surrealist stuff, about like what they were channeling into it more, you know, because I know what I was channeling into it, you know, and and it was dark. But also it was like a release valve too, because like you said, the book is fun.
Oh, it's
like,
a
I
lot
don't
of
want
fun.
people to just think it's like some weird dark nightmare that you can't stop thinking about when it's over. Like, I mean, that would be great on its own level. Like, I would love for it to be Midsummer or something. But
I'm personally glad it wasn't, because I don't want to watch Midsummer. But
it wasn't nearly as scary as Hereditary.
yeah, I'm out on both of those simultaneously.
Yeah.
No, thank you. But it is funny. Like, I mean, it is a genuinely funny book, and like, there's multiple times where I actually like laughed out loud through it. And not that I don't normally like am not entertained by your books, but it is interesting because it like balances all those tones really well.
I mean, I think of it as a bit of a satire on some level. Like, it's a very dark comic thing, like black humor,
Yeah.
which, noir, but with like a dose of the world is so fucked and we all know it.
I like the idea, like at its core. I mean, I don't really consider this a spoiler, but basically, like, the main character, Jonathan Webb, gets into this weird situation because to some degree he takes on a different identity. It's like he wants to be somebody else. And like, who among us hasn't had that desire to like be someone else at some point? Granted, most of the time when I want to be somebody else, it's just like, one time I went to I was in Idaho and I was at a beach and I ran into a bunch of other people and they thought I said my name is Steven instead of David. And so I was like, you know what? I'm going to be Steven for this party. And then I was there for them with an hour, and my friends came to find me and they're like, David? And they're like, no, that's Steven. They were not happy with me at that point. So
yeah, I was going to say this is that. Dude, you were lying about your name at the party? What's going on?
It seemed like a great idea at the time, yeah. Ed.
But that's what happens in the book. Like, he can't sleep. He's sort of at a crisis point in life. And then he follows two masked people down a stairway into a basement because why not? And then sneaks a peek at the guest list and lies and says he's one of the people on it, which is like, how many times when I was a teenager did I try to get a peek at the guest list at a show to lie to a bouncer so I could get in?
Yeah.
And it's like, I never managed to pull it off, but I was thinking about that. Like, what if that had happened? And like, where do you go from there? And yeah, once you get through that door, and like, I just was like, oh, okay, this is the doorway into the night world for Jonathan, and it's like, yeah, because he's like at that point in life where he's successful but unhappy. He's got everything you're supposed to want to have, but it's not enough somehow. And it's like, God, that's the human condition, isn't it?
The funny thing about that moment is, like, it could have been with him going and saying, I'm this name on the list, and going into that room. The funny thing about that is like, from a storytelling standpoint, like, that could have gone like a million different directions. I mean, it could have been like a turn in like a deleted scene from European Vacation where Clark Griswold goes to the wrong place. Instead, like, I love the direction it went. But speaking of going in different directions, one thing I thought was interesting is when the book was announced, it had a different cover.
Yeah.
Why did you guys switch that up?
Sean, when he finished drawing the book, just was working on the design elements for the book and started a lot of the that swirly thing on the cover is sort of inspired by the metalwork in the town in Angoulême. Actually, like, there's all this weird metalwork on lampposts and stuff from hundreds of years ago, and so he started doing stuff like that. And then at some point he added that mask to it, and then he just suddenly had another idea for the cover. It was like the day after he finished drawing the book, and he's like, oh, I think I'm going to do a new cover. And I was like, what? Because he had been so insistent that he loved that previous cover. So it's the first time that's ever happened. But like, I mean, you really should do the book cover after the book is drawn, but because solicitations have to come out, with Where the Body Was, he was about 40 pages in, I think, before he had to draw the cover, because the time delay, we started earlier on that one. But yeah, Night Fever, I think he had to draw the cover first originally. So he hadn't actually seen any of the script before he drew the cover.
So he kind of got to a point where he was like, it feels like it should be something else.
Yeah, he just had this other idea that just came to him that would feel like, I think he thought that the original cover looked too much like a comic book drawing. and didn't not enough like a book cover. And then because I think he originally liked the idea of a black and white drawing with like flat colors on it, where you could see the ink, like as opposed, because he'd been doing so many painted covers with all the Reckless books, and all of our graphic novels have had painted covers, I think, or like ones where it's like a flat drawing with like flat colors he puts over it. So I think he really, he wanted to do something like that because he thought it would be really strong and bold. And I like that original, that cover. I actually have the art right behind me, but in that cardboard back there. But yeah, I thought that first cover was really fantastic. And so I was surprised when he wanted to do a different one. And then he sent me the sketch and I was like, oh, that's fucking insane.
Yeah.
And looks more like just something that if I was working at like a bookstore or a comic store when that arrived, I would be like, we've got to put this front out.
Oh, yeah.
And that's the goal. I was like, about 10 or 12 years ago, I was at like a cocktail party at like a book fair in Seattle. And I met a guy who had just come over from like Random House to work for Amazon to help run like their publishing division, where they were going to actually start printing books. Like this was that long ago, like 12 or 15 years ago, maybe. His word of advice about publishing, like he was talking to a friend of mine and I was just eavesdropping. But he said, always look at the cover at 2 inches tall. That's how every cover needs to be judged, because that's how the majority of people ordering a book, either in a catalog or online from Amazon or somewhere, are looking at it like 1 inch to 2 inches tall. So your cover design has to take that. And the book cover is your best advertisement for your book, like ultimately, because it's the one that someone who's never heard of you will see at a bookstore, hopefully, or a comic store, and so you get about 5 seconds maybe to grab someone's attention on something like that. And so like, I think about that all the time now when we're working on our book covers. We always actually the last few have been like really simple because Sean did that Night Fever thing. He sent me the sketch and I was like, yeah, that's amazing. Yeah. And then the next day he sent in the painted cover and I was like, holy fuck, this is fantastic. Better than what we did before, and really fits the mood of the book a lot. And, and then the Where the Body Was cover, I had like a suggestion for Sean about how to do it. And then he sort of sent me a sketch that was similar. And then we kind of went back and forth on email, and then he did the version that you've seen that looks like fucking amazing and better win like book design awards.
I think well, first off, I just want to say Marcos, if he's listening, is going to be furious about hearing how fast Sean did that cover. Just absolutely furious. One day of painting, come on.
It's a digital painting.
That's true. But the Where the Body Was cover is interesting to me, and I wrote about this when it was announced. In my opinion, it's the most prose book like cover of any cover the two of you have done, where it just, if I saw it like when you walk into Barnes & Noble or whatever bookstore and they have like all the new releases and everything, if it was just up there with the prose books, it would feel like that. But it also wouldn't be out of place in a comic shop. And I think that is a really careful balance for you two, because I feel like now with the graphic novel approach, you're even more book market friendly than you were before, probably. Is that type of cover design a deliberate lean? Or like, are you trying to lean even further into the book market direction these days?
I don't think it's consciously about that as much as just wanting each book to sort of have a really striking cover. I think it started with Junkies in a way of, but the covers for the Fade Out that Sean did for like the hardback and the softback version, the single edition, Fade Out cover, I feel like is like a, could look like an old noir book or something. It's got like a montage of faces. I think we've always sort of tried to make something that would look appropriate in both a comic store and a bookstore. Mm-hmm. But ever since Junkies, especially since we started doing graphic novels instead of collections of comics, we've tried, I feel like, really a lot more to make sure that they look like book covers. Like the Reckless books especially look specifically like book covers from the 60s and 70s, like almost an homage to that genre in a way, that like men's adventure spinner rack covers, except they're fucking hardback books instead of tiny paperbacks on a spinner rack, But yeah, Where the Body Was the first one where I saw it and I was just like, holy shit, Like if this was a mystery novel,
oh yeah,
or a Stephen King book or something, this would be a great cover for that has nothing to do with comics whatsoever. And our names are the biggest on the cover they've ever been, I think, other than maybe Junkies. Which, like, the thing about, if you notice with successful authors, when the author becomes incredibly successful or successful enough that they can continue to sell books, their name becomes the biggest thing on the cover as the title of the book. And I was like, I feel like maybe Sean and I are finally, I've constantly been trying to get him to make our names bigger on the covers. And I'm like, come on, we're the brand. Like, and he's always like, come on. Like, it doesn't work with the design. He's always thinking about the design. But yeah, it's definitely been a conscious decision since Junkies, at least, to sort of make each one feel, like it would look right in both, but yeah, this one I feel like is the first one for sure. I mean, I think the Night Fever cover, the final one he did, like feels like, you could open that up and it would be a novel and you wouldn't be surprised that, I'm sure you're relieved when you open it up and it's a comic instead, because you're like, oh, great, more of this. I don't have to read words. But the Where the Body Was cover, when he sent the finished one over, and I was like, holy shit, I wrote him back. I'm like, are you going to put any color under that or anything? And he was like, no. And I was like, and then I looked at it for a while and I was like, fuck, this is amazing. And I started sending it to novelist friends and they were all like blown away by it. And I was like, yeah, okay, we nailed it. Hilariously, the first design of it, Sean had the guy's head on the cover.
Oh,
I was like, no. That's the whole, no, we can't see his head. It was a great cover design, actually. I was like, shit, like that's actually in some ways a better design, but it ruins the mystery of who the dead body is. So I was like, shit.
And now, a quick word from one of our sponsors. Coming on the heels of the towering success that was Matt Kint and Louis LaRosa's Megalith on Kickstarter, the guerrilla comics publisher that is Bad Idea is back in the lab, cooking up other comic book madness for you all to enjoy. What's next for them? I have absolutely no idea. Nobody tells me anything. Maybe a nap? I hear Kickstarters are pretty exhausting. But there's undoubtedly something new and bonkers on the horizon, so keep an eye on Bad Idea at badideacorp.com and on their varying social media presences at @BadIdeaHello. And now, back to the show. I think it's interesting how everything keeps continuing to build for you and Sean. And it makes sense. Like, you have this library of books and you become more known and you become more, this is a pairing that's going to sell books and everything like that.
Yeah.
But you said in your newsletter, this is, I believe, our highest ordered book so far since we started doing OGNs instead of single issues. Night Fever was.
Yeah, the advanced orders up to the day of sale,
Do you think that a lot of that comes down to what I was talking about, where it's just building and building and building faith in this OGN structure?
Well, I think it's partly that, and partly retailers sort of learning how fast they can sell, their initial order of it, because your initial order is the cheapest order, where you get your highest discount and your cheapest shipping on a product. Reorders, you don't get as big a discount on through the distributors usually, depending on which distributors you're using. So I feel like we kind of, it's funny because other people ask me about trying to get to the point in their career where Sean and I are at. And I'm like, oh yeah, it was super easy. We just did books together for 18 years and then we decided to switch to graphic novel. It's like, it was such a slow build. There was 10 years of wishing we could just do graphic novels, but the market wouldn't support that kind of thing. Because you'd see people who were big name people put out a graphic novel and it would only sell 10,000 copies. And you're like, oh crap, we can't do it. So it was really, I always think of Junkies as it wasn't a risky experiment for us, but, had Junkies not sold out, its first printing in 2 months or something, which was 30,000 copies or something like that, which that's, more than most people will sell on the first issue of a comic. Had that not happened, though, I don't know that we would have, ended up just coming back and doing graphic novels. Because, I think, Pulp, when Pulp was a bigger hit than Junkies and sold out in 3 weeks or something, And we were like, fuck, we've got to rush out a paperback, like, so that was like, okay, this market is actually here for us, But yeah, it's funny. If not for the pandemic, I was, starting the first issue of a what was going to be like a 12 to 20 issue series before, we decided to do Reckless. I had like this whole other idea that now I'm like, I don't think I'm ever going to do it. Like it was totally wrong. When I thought about it again, I was like, it's just the wrong thing for us. Like, why did I think that would be Reckless? Like served, I think, every part of my creativity that I wanted to put into that other one, like I was able to do it with Reckless, but make it more fun for me and more like something in our wheelhouse.
I think that one of the underrated parts as to why the OGN structure has worked so well for you two, and you may disagree with this, I don't know. I mean, part of it is just the fact that Sean is so fast that being able to put out multiple books in 1 year, even if it, like this year, it's like you just had Night Fever come out, and then December is Where the Body Was. Having that, it kind of creates the repetition of like the monthly format ish, but with like a bigger format.
Yeah, the first year we put out 3 in 10 months.
Yeah.
It was like December, March, and then October. So it was in 10 months, we put out 3 full, like 150-page graphic novels. But it's like we had the first one done, like before it was, before we were deep into it. So we had a little bit of runway before we started. But yeah, like doing 2 full-length graphic novels a year is a lot of work.
Oh, yeah.
But yeah, I mean, that really, I feel like we sort of have trained the audience a little bit in like a good way. It's like if you look at like mystery series or something like John Sanford or Michael Connolly or Lee Child, like they all have a certain month that their book comes out. And it's not the same month that like the other guy's book comes out, or it's not the same day as like Lee Child and Michael Connolly don't put out their book on the same day because they're selling to the exact same audience. Probably. But they each sell like 1 million books the day it comes out. So, but that's the thing that those big franchises do is they have like an appointment with their audience every single year. Like every September, like Lee Child in an interview talked about like it used to be like April or May for him. And then his publisher wanted him to switch to September. So 1 year he had to do 2 books. I was like, fuck. But that was like the brutal switch to September. But yeah, it's I feel like that's important. And there's part of me that hates being off the shelves every month still, because I go to the comic store. I love comic stores. But there's another part of me that's like, man, I would love to just take 2 years and do like a 500-page graphic novel and just put that out. But then I'm like, oh God, we'd be so forgotten about by then. It's like, that's how I think. I hope we wouldn't actually be, but I'm like, I'm both happy and angry that Dan Clowes took like 5 years between graphic novels. Cause I'm like, I'm happy there's one coming out, but I'm like, what were you doing? Like it's only 120 pages. Seriously.
The repetition thing, like the appointment viewing thing is interesting because there's proof that works in comics too. I mean, like if you look at like the biggest hits, I mean, for parents, Dogman and Diary of the Wimpy Kid, not really a comic, kind of a fusion thing. They come out like the same time every single year. It's a reliability you can count on. And like that is super impactful. I mean, it's the same for monthly comics too. It's like historically, if you can maintain a cadence, you're not going to do well, but it's going to help you.
Yeah, you'll keep a large part of your audience as long as you don't go too far off track. I feel like with like a monthly comic. I remember my roommate was working at a comic store when Marvel did that big X event where someone went back in time and killed Professor X in the 90s.
Age of Apocalypse. Yeah.
Yeah. And then they canceled the books for 6 months and launched all these other books. And he said there was about like 20 or 30% of the people at their store who were subscribed to X-Men who canceled all the books. And they were like, thank God. And it was like they'd been buying it for years, but not enjoying it, but they couldn't stop. But when Marvel canceled the book and started and relaunched with a different title and a different number, it was like permission to quit a habit for them. And it was like, oh, okay. Like, which is funny because like I quit reading some comics when Secret Wars happened when I was in like 10th grade or 11th grade or whatever. And Secret Wars happened, and I was like angry that Spider-Man had a black costume, and I was like, I don't want to read black costume Spider-Man. I want old Spider-Man and his cool costume. Like I would always talk about this at the Marvel summits, how I was like the guy who the events actually turned off of comics, where I was like, oh, now I don't want to have to read every book. I just want to read the books I like, which is like everything they published, but like because I worked at a comic store, so
I'm the exact opposite of those guys who all dropped the Age of Apocalypse thing. I was also like 9 or 10 or something, but I remember when they did like the other one,
you were
I was
excited
like,
about it.
Oh, it was like the biggest moment of my life. I was also
it's a great idea,
very young. Yeah, it was so cool.
By the way, I was excited when I read yesterday about Kirkman's like secret shared universe thing. I was like, that's a great idea, like because his comic being part of it, I was like, oh, that's kind of brilliant. You've got your creator-owned comic in a shared universe with 2 fucking Hasbro products.
Right.
Like, that's insane. Way to trick people into buying your comic.
It was really funny because yesterday I went to my comic shop right as it was opening because I knew the Transformers thing was coming and I wanted to read Void Rivals anyways. And I knew that there's a lot of those, collector types who go in there and they're always like posted up at noon. That line was probably twice as long as usual. And every single one of them was there for Void Rivals. And get this, Battle Chasers. They were both jacked for both of them.
I thought you were about to say Night Fever, and I was going to be really excited.
No, I'm sorry. I meant Night Fever. That was the third one. You would think so, given the fact I've been signing all these autographs for Neo Noir, but apparently that is not the case.
They're all Winter Soldier fans.
I do think that there is like something interesting about all of that, the whole thing that Kirkman did, because it is like, it's one of the only times I can remember a single issue series like generating like significant excitement in a while.
Since like Obama was in Spider-Man or something.
Right, exactly. Yeah. I mean, it was a genuine surprise, which are extraordinarily rare.
Oh, yeah. Actually, what was the last huge surprise was when Kirkman ended Walking Dead on issue 194 or something, instead of going to issue 200, even after advanced soliciting fake comics that he hadn't done. I mean, Robert's one of my best friends, but I cannot believe how much he cares about the comics industry and how much he wants to recreate those moments for fans like that we've had growing up, because I didn't grow up in an era where you read the previews catalog and knew what was coming in comics. I just went to the comic store and bought what was coming out. I was surprised every week, by whatever was in those comics. And so many hardcore fans are like, they've given up the surprise by wanting to know what's coming, and so I think Robert's always trying to find ways to bring that back to them.
That's one of my favorite things about Robert, to be honest, is the fact that he's like always trying to figure out new solutions to like old problems. And it's really interesting to see that. I mean, both you and him, actually, like you and Sean and Robert, like you're at a position where you can actually experiment with the form and you can actually change things up and see if it'll work. And it is interesting to see him like focusing so much on the single issue form and you guys going into OGN and both kind of finding success that way.
Yeah.
The last thing I want to bring up with Night Fever, you talked about how successful Night Fever was. It was the most ordered book. One thing I'm interested in is like, how does that compare to like the trades you've done or like the criminal hardcovers that you redid? Is it way more or is it comparable?
No, well, over time, like all of our trades, sell well. It's just like when you release a trade paperback collection of a comic, unless you're like Walking Dead or Saga or, there's Sex Criminals, there's probably a dozen books when, the trade collection came out that it actually sold better than the comics, like right out of the gate.
Mm-hmm.
But usually, like if you're selling like 25 or 30,000 single issues, like your trade, might sell 10 or 12,000 up front if you're lucky. But you print, like 20 or 30 or something, and it just takes years to move them. Like I think, it's just, what I found was that we had a combination of people who had read the single issues and wanted to buy the collections, but they wanted the hardbacks, which once we released the first hardback, they knew that there would eventually be more hardbacks.
Right.
So it was like a combination of those people. and then other people who just wanted to read it in trades, but then they saw the hardbacks and they were like, oh, so it was like, oh, fuck. Okay. Well, our audience is a hardback audience apparently. And the graphic novels have kind of proved to me that the hardest core part of our audience likes a hardcover more than a paperback.
Mm-hmm.
But, our paperbacks move continually. Like Fade Out has, the single edition of the Fade Out is one of our highest selling books. Like we go back to print with that every year or two. But yeah, it's just, you print lower runs sometimes, like, especially like on a second or third printing on like the Fade Out, we might only print like 10,000 or 15,000 or something, but I mean, those are great numbers just in general. Like, but I know that there are, they're not Saga, numbers where they're probably printing 100,000 out of the gate or something. So, but it's, the field is an interesting thing because it's like, you can have a level of success where you like Sean and I constantly have to remind myself how successful we are, because it's like, I always feel like every book that we put out is like, God, I hope this one's the one that really hits really big. And it's like, in a way they all do.
Right.
Like they hit bigger than most things do. It's just like, yeah, they're not Walking Dead.
Right.
So it's like, but at the same time, they're also not that, they're not like, a genre thing with an obvious hook. They're like a weird comic done by these two guys who've been working together for like 25 years. so and kind of can just do whatever the fuck we want now. So
when Night Fever gets adapted and we get introduced to the Rayner-verse, I'm pretty sure you're going to start seeing that.
The Rayner-verse.
That's right.
I kind of want to do like a prequel book about Rayner now.
Oh my God. The amazing thing about Rayner is you could do
a great name for a book, Rayner.
Yeah, there we go. Like you could do literally anything about Rayner, and I think it would be interesting. He's a very fascinating character for all the reasons you said. But to close, I want to take a curve. We talked about this before. I want to talk about the now late great John Romita Sr. You were reading about stuff about him beforehand. You wrote about him in your newsletter. He passed away this week at the age of 93, and you wrote about your admiration of him in your most recent newsletter, saying Romita's work on Spider-Man and his romance comic art in the 60s and 70s had a huge impact on you as a kid, so much so that I'd say without his art, I might not have fallen so in love with comics. It's really interesting. Like the romance stuff wasn't something I was super familiar with, and it makes sense given your own, Last of the Innocent and like the different kind of romance elements that are in there. What was it about his work that meant so much to you in the way that it impacted you like that?
I think just the way he drew everything. Like the first comics I ever saw from him would have been like those early Spider-Mans, which were either like reprints of the ones he drew or the stuff where Gil Kane was drawing it and he was inking. Like Gil Kane was doing like pencils and layouts and Romita was doing finishes on some of it. I have the artist edition of that one. And his stuff is just amazing. Like he's one of the best inkers in the history of comics. People don't talk about that much because he inked a lot of other people as well as himself.
Mm-hmm.
Because he was like the art director at Marvel through most of the 70s too. But he designed like so many of their characters and costumes and stuff. He fucking designed Luke Cage, like
the Punisher,
like
Wolverine.
Yeah, the Punisher. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, there's all these characters that the first character model sheet is drawn by him. And it's just, but there's just something really appealing about the way he drew like Peter Parker and his friends and like hanging out at the coffee shop. And I remember being like 4 years old or 3 years old and looking at those comics and just imagining the life of those like kids in New York and, wanting to like be there with them. And, like the first time you see a drawing of Gwen Stacy by John Romita, if you don't immediately fall in love with her, it's like almost impossible, and there's just something about the way he drew all of that was so attractive, and just drew everybody in. And it's funny because I was looking at like a bunch of his art yesterday and I found some pages from his first issue of Spider-Man where he was kind of trying to transition. So he kind of drew it more like Ditko, like thin line inking and lots of panels per page. but almost immediately, like Peter Parker takes off his glasses and like he meets Mary Jane by the end of the issue. And like everybody's like, everything's coming up Peter all of a sudden after like 10 issues of like the worst, most depressing shit in Peter Parker's life. And it's like he takes off his glasses, he's riding around on a scooter, everyone's asking him out. And you're just like, and he's like, suddenly he's a handsome guy. And you're like, oh, because John Romita is drawing him and he draws fucking romance comics. Like he went directly from romance comics to superheroes. Like he never felt he was like a superhero artist, apparently.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's just really interesting. He reminds me of Toth a lot. Toth was a better storyteller. I mean, Toth is like one of the best storytellers in the history of comics. Like Toth was definitely a better storyteller than Romita, but Romita could make you care about people. Like, and Toth couldn't, like you really root for Peter Parker and Mary Jane and Gwen Stacy and, all these characters. Like you feel their emotions in a way that, I don't think a lot of artists of that time or ever, are able to do. And there was just something always just, I don't know, about his art that was just so appealing to your eye. And I remember as a kid, like I only started writing because I wanted stuff to draw. Like I just wanted to be a penciler when I was a kid. And so I would draw comics and I would just write my own like ripoffs of Spider-Man or Werewolf by Night or whatever. And then I would draw it. And, I would get like 4 pages in and realize I had no idea what was happening. So I'd quit and start something else. But I used to just try to draw like him, like to draw women like him. And then when I discovered Archie, it was like, oh yeah, Dan DeCarlo. Like I didn't know who he was, but I was like trying to draw like Betty and Veronica and Archie and Jughead. And, so it was just like one of those things that was like a huge part of my life. Like Spider-Man, if you had like a favorite comic as a kid, like mine would have been Spider-Man. And then I also bought Captain America every month too. But most of the time, Captain America wasn't a great comic. And most of the time when I was growing up, Spider-Man was.
Right.
So it was really like that thing that I just had such a huge relationship to. And, when you think about Spider-Man, you're probably thinking about a John Romita drawing.
Yeah.
It's like if you think about Morgan Freeman reading a thing, you hear his voice. That's like, he's kind of like that, but just, those few times I got to work with him and then hearing through our editor, like how flattered he was, I was just like, who is this guy? Does he not realize he's fucking John Romita? I would have paid him like so much more than Marvel did to draw those pages, like I would have given him my salary for the issue to draw 2 pages,
So you wrote up in your newsletter about how you had worked with him twice on Daredevil, once for a cover you wrote and conceived, and another one for a nightmare sequence within the interior of an issue. And I know you didn't work directly with him, but it is funny. Like I thought about that, and I thought about how, like when I talk to writers about how excited they are to get in pages and like how it's like really cool to do that. I imagine that was probably some of the more anticipated pages you'd ever gotten in, like being able to see those.
That specific issue of Daredevil too has like Bill Sienkiewicz, Alex Maleev, Marco Durkovic, like I can't even remember who else is. There's like so many different artists doing like 2 or 3 pages.
Was that like the one that was like 500? It was like
it's like issue 100, I think.
For 100. Me. Yeah.
Yeah, and then a couple issues later was 500, maybe. I don't remember how they did that.
Math is tough.
But I remember it was like a 100-page issue or a 64-page. It was like a huge issue of Daredevil that we brought in like all these famous people who'd worked on Daredevil before. But yeah, I mean, for me, the Romita pages were the ones that I was the most like, is he done? Is he done? Come on, let me see. But yeah, I was looking at him again and I kind of wish that Matt, I mean, I know like our colorist, colored it a bit more flat, but it was like, I wish he'd colored it more like a 60s or 70s comic, like with just like the flat colors or even like the color dots almost. Just looking at it now, I was like, nowadays he probably would, but that was the way people were coloring everything at the time, was like shading things. But yeah, it was kind of funny looking.
I love that cover.
I hadn't looked at it for a while. Yeah, that cover was, because there's such a joke that no one ever got. Like, no, not even they could see their blind love because they're both blind.
Yes.
Yeah. Oh, and I wrote that when I found out I had the idea for it, and I didn't do a sketch, but I kind of sort of sketched it in words, like what it would be, like her in the foreground crying and him climbing out the window, looking back at her, and because those old romance comics they so often had a crying woman with a thought balloon. Mm-hmm. Like, I can't believe Flick doesn't love me anymore, holding a picture of a guy playing polo.
I think that you shared like one of the romance covers. What is it? It was like one of the ones from his career. Where, falling in love, and they're like, it's such a dramatic scene. But there's something about those covers, the ones with the dialogue or the thought bubbles and stuff on it, that is just like, it's hard not to like see that and be like, I kind of want to see what happens next. I kind of wish we still had a little bit of that in comics.
People at Marvel and DC are always trying to bring that back, like the dialogue on covers and stuff for the monthlies. I could never do that on a graphic novel cover. I don't think my stomach would allow it.
No.
I think I'd freak out.
I think it works in the monthly format. In the graphic novel format, it would just seem really strange. But yeah, I don't know. It was really cool reading your write-up and the fact that you got to do that because, I don't know. I mean, it's like how often you get to work with your heroes. Yeah,
I had like a couple in my career, like him, Dick Giordano. I did an issue of Batman with once. Though I didn't really interact with him. That was in the days before email, even, really. And old guys like him didn't do email anyway. Mm-hmm. But that was really fun to do. And then Gene Colan, I wrote the last comic he ever drew. And then that Romita stuff. But I mean, with Gene, I was actually on the phone with him a bunch and stuff, like when we were working on it, which was a lot of fun. And it was like right after my dad died, so I kind of adopted Gene as like my stand-in father for a little while, and just call him up to just shoot the shit and talk about old movies and stuff. It was a lot of fun.
That's amazing. Well, you're always up to very interesting things, Ed. I love Night Fever. Where the Body Was is I'm very excited for it. Also, always excited for more Friday. But that is all I have for you. Thank you so much for coming on to talk about Night Fever and everything else you're up to. I appreciate you taking the time.
Yeah, thanks for having me, man.
Thanks for listening to this week's episode of Off Panel with writer Ed Brubaker. You can find him on his email newsletter and his work in the recently released Night Fever and the upcoming Where the Body Was. Big thanks to Deanna Chapman for stepping in to edit this week's episode. If it sounds better than usual, it's because of her. Love Off Panel and want to support it? Subscribe to the podcast on Apple Podcasts today and give the show a rating or review while you're at it, but 5 stars only. You can also support the show by backing on Patreon. Find the show at patreon.com/offpanel. And when you back it on there, you get early access to each week's podcast, as well as weekly content and more. Want even more? Subscribe to my subscription comic site, Sketched, at sketch.com for long-form articles, interviews, and the rest of the site's content. You can find Off Panel and Sketched on social media by following it on Twitter and Instagram at @sketchcomic or following me at @slicefriedgold. Big thanks to all my existing patrons, including Cancel Comics, Scott Place, Darcy Van Polgeest, Kevin Bides, Travis Schmeiser, Tom Evans, Natalie Mockery, Reed Beeman, Kelly Sudaconic, Max Wood, Jeremy Lambert, Brian, Matteo Ciccati, Chris Doré, Nir Levy, Dennis Hoffman, Jason Hussa, Kieran Gillen, Jonathan Kent Uratam, Henry Johnson, Django Boren, James Tynan IV, Chris Langford, Jason Wood, Tom Peachy, Ben Damstead, Rom V, Nick Walker, Patrick Coyle, Isaac Oren, Scott Carpenter, Rent Arb Studios Comics, Capes and Tights Podcast, Klaus Van Deven, Brian, Summit Industries, Jack Mulqueen, Kyle, Carl Kerschel, Robert Masella, Elza Chartier, Luke Nakashoji, Dr. Luke, Scott Hazelwood, Canadian by Proxy, Bradley Rader, Carl Troy, Brandon DePills, Patrick Brower, Declan Chavez, Dan Garino, Adam Freeman, Ben Wild, Brian Klein Q, Nick Bennett, Birdcage Comics Cafe, Susanna Polo, Reed Hinkley Barnes, Mario Tiambang, Andrew Carita, Matt Mahoney, Stephen Hall, Philip Myra, Chris Pachalo, Torrin Grunbeck, Fuzz Bubbles, Christopher Todd, Transmitter Down, Walls Comics and Books, Akil Wilson, Alex Dimitriopoulos, Terry Dodson, Wesley Giff, Sean Kirkham, Julio Anta, Brett A. Schmidt, Jason Goodmanson, Paul Reinwan, Vita Ayala, Akil, Philip Seavey, Al Ewing, Ryan Alcock, David Kelly, Nick Polito, Matthew Groom, Jason Massey, Adam Bogert, Matthew Taylor, Nick Patera, Jacob Sorelli, Ford Gilmore, David Baraldi, Nick Hall, Bjorn Basin, John Hendricks, Steve Anderson, Ian Maxfield, Cliff Chang, Carl McMahon, Scott McGovern, Nathan Fairbairn, Adam Highfield, Fiona Staples, Mark Abnett, Michael Shirley, Tom Barnett, Jim Demonakos, Norbert, Nick Lowe, James Kaplan, and Mission Comics and Art in San Francisco. You guys are all the best. A quick thanks to Wolfpack for letting me use their song Outro as the show's opening theme, and to Upright T-Rex Music, who wrote and performed Off Panel's outro and ad music just for the show. Check out their music on Spotify because it's completely delightful. Thanks for listening, and tune in next week for another episode.